everyone, this is Lainey here at Harvick Farms, and today's video is about how I got multiple grants for our farm, the farm side of it, and for our business of grants from USDA, NRCS, SARE grants, and much more. Let's get into it. Since 2002, I've been working on multiple branches and entities, learning the ins and the outs from farm grants to cost shares to multiple different other programs. And guess what? It's finally paying off. We have secured multiple grants this year, including the Climate Smart Grant, which was technically last year, going into our second year, a SARE Farmer Rancher Grant, and much more coming later on in the video. I am also exploring irrigation and low tunnels for 2026. So today I'll break down each of those programs, how I got them, what you need to know if you're looking for funding for your own farm, and the exact amounts I received. For example, is intercropping herbs and roots grant to be able to do things that we were wanting to do on our farm, truly, and then to actually be able to have funding available for it, whether that was related to a grant or loan. We finally have the means to get things started instead of feeling like we have to wait another year to make it happen. So the USDA actually wants to help beginner farmers. There's no acreage minimum for many of these programs. They know that we need more farmers and they're putting money back into it to make it happen. So the first one that I'm going over is the EQIP, which is the Environmental Quality Incentives Program. This is key, the USDA program that funds the conservation projects on farms through soil and water actually was one of them. The riparian buffer cost share through soil and water conservation is a reimbursement. I get really nerdy on these things and I print out everything that we have received and our requirements as a farm in these documents, and I also have them on Excel spreadsheets and much more to keep track of everything, because just because you got approved for a grant, that's actually some of the easier part. You have to then follow through and make sure that you're doing everything that you said that you were going to do. So in this particular one, this is our riparian buffer. In this contract and in the rest of the guides, it's planting guides. It is how many acreage that we have involved. And in this scenario, what we have, it's getting planted on 4.7 acres of our 56 acres farm. And so to clarify, we have a 1.2 acre business farm in town. And then we have our own farm that we also work off of, which is 56 acres. So with some of these programs and grants, we've had them for either us as farmers, because we're new beginning farmers, or for the business, which is now just getting into its fourth year of business. So the riparian buffer, it is 4.7 acres. And what it does is that it provides wildlife and to improve the soil health and protect water sources and create better environment for local wildlife while benefiting the farm. So really high level overview of what that one is. Essentially what that one is we'll be getting black oak, sycamore, persimmon, witch hazel, elderberry, chickpea oak, and shortleaf pine. And we'll be planting that all on the 4.2 acres that hug the water line that is going through our property. And we have a year to get that accomplished. So that is the first one that we were going to go over. The next one that we have received, it is called the Climate Smart Grant. This one is through the University of Mizzou. And we are currently in our second year of a 3-year grant requirement through them. The total funding was $10,000 over 3 years. So like I said, we've got the first $5,000 up front, and then the remaining $5,000 is divided between the 2 years. So this second year we'll get $2,500 in about a month or so, and then we'll get our last $2,500 as well. The idea for this particular grant is that it supports climate-friendly farming techniques and soil health and better resource management. So in our particular situation, we have intercropping related into that. We have alley cropping that we're doing, and we're also doing reduced tillage. And so those are some of the practices that we're doing within that particular grant. So if you're looking for more information, definitely I will show you where to find this information in this video as well. So stay tuned. Next is the RFSI EQIP grant. So we were approved for this grant last year. Right now in the state of Missouri, this one is pending some approval. And so even though we were approved for this one for a total of $25,000, this one in particular is focused on the farm equipment that you need. And so when we applied for this one, and what was approved is a cooler, stainless steel tables, 3-basin sink. We also are having a root crop washer and a greens washer, as well as a dehydrator. So this is a great example. Not only have we been applying for grants for 3 years, even though you've gotten approval for a grant, it still may not be instant and still may be 6 to a year from that date. And quite honestly, we may not get this one. We just don't know. We're kind of in legislative limbo right now. But patience is key, and I think it's going to be worth it at the end. Worst case scenario, we don't get it, and we'll have to delay the projects we're wanting to get done this year for a few more years until we can figure out the funding for those things. So that is one that I thought was really cool, because that allowed potentially for us to get some really larger equipment in, which the idea for our farm is to allow for people to come in, and we'll be transitioning our education space to more of a commercial space. So that allows farmers that are locally to come and be able to produce value-added products, because currently the closest one is about an hour and a half away for a certified kitchen that is open to the public. So we'll be really excited about that. I think that's going to touch so many people's lives, but we will see on that one. The next grant that we didn't necessarily get approved for, local schools who applied did. And this was a total funding for $4,000 over 2 years. It allows schools to have applied for this grant. And the idea is for the schools to reach out to local farmers and get fresh local food that they'll bring back into the schools and serve on a nutritional lunch, breakfast, etc. So this is truly to support small farms while educating kids where their food comes from. So I love that. We're going to go over some of the tools and the websites you can look for to find university grants, USDA grants, and other things for funding for you as a farm. I would say one of the biggest things that I learned is don't be afraid to reach out to USDA, NRCS, your local soil and water. So many acronyms in this world, so you definitely have to learn what they mean first and then navigate those waters to see who would be the best fit. We really had to spend a lot of time and effort of building relationships, understanding the people in the offices, understanding these grants, how to write these grants, what they're looking for, and how does it fit within our focus on our farm as well. Because once you do get a grant, you're committing yourself when you sign those documents to do that item. So if you're applying for grants that you think it's going to sound great if it possibly was improved, but you don't have the passion or it doesn't fit in line with your farm, I wouldn't suggest you applying for that. Apply for something that's going to make sense. That sounds obvious, but when you start to get in the depths of applying for grants, you may lose sight of that. So there is a time in which like I said, been applying for 3 years. I've applied for over 50 grants and have been told no 50 plus times previously, except this last year. And so you have to definitely think about the time that it will take for you to apply for these grants or to set an appointment with your USDA office or FSA, the Farm Service Agency. And so yes, that is time that you're not necessarily getting paid for initially, but for the long-term gain can be significant. So this is definitely not a short game, if you will. And so if you're willing to stick with it and you're willing to gain feedback from grants or from your local office of what they're looking for and truly take that into consideration and adapt and be agile and understanding what they need and what is going to also work well for your farm and align your mission and the values, it will all start to work out. So let's look at some of these websites. First, let's look at the U.S. Department of Agriculture. Here you can go under food, farming, forestry, sustainability. It just depends on what you are looking for as a farmer, rancher, or grower in the need of assistance. I would highly recommend going physically into the office, introducing yourself, connecting with the individuals with the partnerships, because many of the times those individuals are part of your community. So building those relationships is just going to be beneficial for the both of you. It's a win-win. You get to know your neighbor essentially, and your neighbor tends to want to help. Now let's dig in specifically into Natural Resources Conservation Services, also known as NRCS. Telling you, acronyms galore around these places. So here you will see that they have assistant programs, the initiatives, and so forth. In particular, what I discussed earlier was the EQIP grant, which you can look in here and get more information. High tunnels, low tunnels, irrigation systems, wildlife management, conservation managements of different sorts, all kinds of things that are here. And the EQIP grant is just very dependent on where your county is as far as funding goes. It really varies. And looking into so many and being in many social media groups related to farmers and gardening, many people will say that. There are some areas that tend to just get more funding or different funding than other counties. As an example, I'm in an area where it's a lot of corn and it's a lot of cows, and there's not a lot of new farming as far as it goes in specialty crops. Strawberries, blackberries, elderberry, herbs, those type of things. So when we came in 3 years ago asking for help and guidance, there wasn't a ton of very specific resources out of that office because their full focus was on those majority farmers and crops. Totally makes sense. But I do see how people may get defeated based off of that. Don't be defeated. I actually find that many people that are working in the office, not that they do not care, they care very much. They also just may not be in their wheelhouse, and that's okay. It's a great learning opportunity because then they can learn something new, and then you can bring something to them that's creative and interesting, and you can both find resources, which all in all may end up helping some of the other farmers and growers in your area. That's what it's all about, collaboration and community. So here in EQIP, you can see there's high tunnels, air quality, on-farm energy, landscape, great resource here, and it's good. It is important that you actually look over this stuff before you go in the office to just have an idea. And so you can have more of a constructive meeting with them. And then next is the Farm Service Agency, FSA. And so FSA, you can have loan assistance, disaster assistance, emergency things as well as related to livestock for your university, newsletters that are related to the crops or the livestock that you grow on your farm, because they have really great resources. An example, University of Mizzou sends me a newsletter. Some of them are specifically about specialty crops. Some of them are about grants. I'm signed up for quite a few newsletters and I love them because they get down to all the nitty-gritty on a one page. Like, they know who their audience is. So they will send you grants, they will send you loans, they will send you the free webinars that they have that's about farming or marketing or grants or how to grow or the current pest that's on Thrive. Those newsletters are actually super informative, so I highly encourage you to do that, and it will help you identify these opportunities where you can get funding. Once again, and you build a relationship with people in your community that are trying to solve the problems that you are most likely having. So, great resource. Farm Raise, which, yes, they have products and tools, but they also look for and help with grant management as well. So with particular one of my grants, the Climate Smart, they actually do their grant management through Farm Raise. Super easy, straightforward, and I love it. And it's great communication as well. You can go through tracking, you can find more other funding opportunities. I'm also on their newsletter, so I get to hear and see when this funding is coming. I think that's one of the other crucial things. You could look on these websites all day, every day, but unless you kind of get that notification, that little ding to say, hey, look at this, be aware the deadline is in 2 months. I think those are one of the most important things, because as a farmer, you're going to be so busy working that if you don't get the aha moment that you need to go check and do something, you may get lost in the shuffle of trying to keep tracking of all this. So next is, here is an example of our Climate Smart project. We can go in here and see our dashboard and what that looks like. And once again, you can take a quiz, find your farming opportunity, all the things. I also would say one more last resource that I always look for when it comes to the newsletters and so forth is MU Extension for our area. If you're in a different state, I'm pretty sure, 98% sure, that your university in that state has very similar guidelines and publications and online courses and events and newsletters, because their purpose is to educate and to spread the word. And so many people out there want to help you understand and navigate these waters. So here, just as an example, all the education that you can find on here. But in addition to that, you are able to find a specialist, and I would find a horticulture specialist. I will find them and I will ask if I can get their newsletter, and they're super quick, like signed up within about 2 minutes of asking for it. And those newsletters are quite amazing. Just know, having to find grants and cost shares and any type of capital funding loans, it takes time, but know that you have resources out there. And if you're willing to put the work into it, I can tell you that people want to help you. There's funding out there specifically for you to reach and grab. Now, will it take 2 months and you get all that funding? You may not. The reality is, it may take a couple of years to get that funding. But do your due diligence, keep on striving, and keep building those relationships with those individuals in the offices. And you can potentially be like us here at Harvick Farms, where you start to get cost shares and grants. Stay focused and stay organized, and make sure that we get all of the things at the right time, the right place. And we are super excited to be able to get grants. One of the things that we learned personally when we were applying for the grants, but I was able to have my husband review it, my family review it, advisors review it, free grant writers that are available typically through the university review it, and be able to identify what makes a good grant. And the reality of things that I heard this saying quite a bit of some time ago in our second year after applying, getting told no, is that the reality of it is when you're a new beginner farmer, there are grants and opportunities out there that are dedicated a little lump sum for you. But at the same time, a beginner farmer or a minority farmer, that is 10 years or less. And the reality of things is that even from a business perspective, if you've only been a business or a farm for 3 years, less than 3 years, that there's some considerations being had there. How serious are you in this? Farming is not just a career, it's a way of life. And so there's also some expectations on showing essentially proof that you can maintain a cost share or grant documentation. So there is definitely opportunities and reasons why you would keep wanting to apply for grants at every opportunity possible, because it shows that you're doing your due diligence and you're serious. As a individual, a farm that is wanting to get grants and is wanting to get that funding, you're willing to put the effort into it and not give up. So I would say that is definitely a trick that I would put out there is don't give up. Keep following up on applications you have for cost shares. Keep making those appointments at the office and touching base with your partners. Keep applying for those grants that you've gotten told no for, and take the feedback, because they will give you feedback on your grant application, and truly take that into consideration of what they're looking for and do your research for the grants. A big component of grants is that you have done research on grants that are similar to something that you are applying for, and that you understand what makes your application different. And if they also are looking for you as a business owner, as an individual, as a farm, understand the responsibilities of what it takes to run a grant. And they want to see that also in your application. If you're saying that you are going to be able to present on social media or do an education event or throw a festival, or be able to manage a specialty crop. They want to see that evidence that you understand how to do those things. So they're not just throwing money at some individual that may have not a clue or even planted a seed in some dirt. They want to be able to see that you know what you're doing. And even though you're doing a cool new experiment, you have a baseline of knowledge and education to be able to get a grant through the process and succeeded in terms of being able to find valuable information that can then be dispersed to other individuals like other farmers so they can learn from that experience. The grant money isn't just thrown to people just because. The intention is to spread the communication and identify new solutions to problems that people are having. And the idea is to essentially be able to disperse that information with the most appropriate, and almost that's consideration too on the amount of people that it is touching. So if there is a grant that is only affecting 2 farmers, and you have a similar application that has a very similar idea as you, but their presentation says it's going to touch 200 people, think about that, is that they may be leaning more towards the one that's going to touch 200 farmers versus 2 farmers. So keep that in consideration with your grant. Keep in consideration the length of time of your business and your resume, essentially, of how you would be able to propel that grant and continue to move it forward and be able to get it to the finish line. For example, is intercropping herbs and roots grant to be able to do things that we were wanting to do on our farm, truly, and then to actually be able to have funding available for it, whether that was related to a grant or loan. We finally have the means to get things started instead of feeling like we have to wait another year to make it happen. Now, I hope this provides some kind of positive influence to you, and I hope that I've been able to express potentially how to get some grants and what are the things out there. So once again, this is Lainey from Harvick Farms, and I hope you all have a wonderful day, and let me know in the comments below if there's anything else you want a video on. Until next time.